Lasers. Lasers are so...
90s?
I was gonna say 70s. Can you please stop making me feel old?
Got bad news for you, Sam. You are old.
Hello there, Sarah from 17 once again. This is my Splinter Cell Chaos Theory 100% expert walkthrough. And you might be wondering what the hell that actually means. So 100% in relation to this game is not the same as a lot of people's perception of 100%. I will not be doing absolutely everything, collecting absolutely everything, and showing you absolutely everything, because that is a completionist notion of 100%. In this game, there is a ranking system at the end of each mission, and you are graded on your performance from a scale of 0 to 100%. I'm going to be getting the maximum scale, the maximum rank, on every situation, and there is in fact a trophy in this game where you have to beat every level with above, I think, 80%, 85%, so it's going to help people move towards that goal. It's also going to unlock several trophies throughout playing, which will be, do not use a medkit. I don't know if I kill anybody as I try to jump out of this hole and fail miserably. I've tried to do as many as I can. I'm not going to dwell too much on them. They'll be in the description because I'll look them up when I'm not recording, and you'll be able to know exactly what you will get if you follow this from beginning to end and you emulate the strategies that I'm going to be sharing. So Chaos Theory is my favourite Splinter Cell. I think this was the game that truly revolutionised it in a lot of ways. And the first thing a lot of people are going to notice, if you've watched my previous two playthroughs, or walkthroughs, of Splinter Cell and then the sequel Pandora Tomorrow, is that this game is leaps and bounds technologically more advanced than those. This series has always been moving towards what you're witnessing here, but this game has much more natural lighting, much more ambient effects, and because of this, it's going to be a little bit darker than those previous games, and on my television, it wasn't too bad. One of the things I've learnt when it comes to capturing over the few years that I've been doing it is that capture devices generally darken things, and the one way you can correct this is through colour correction and through brightness adjustments in post. However, for a lot of my recordings, I'll generally just adjust the brightness so that it's a little bit brighter than the standard default setting, and it usually balances it out that way. And pretty much exclusively, I haven't had any problems. I had one person complain about my Dark Souls videos, saying that they were inferior in quality because I had my brightness set to max so you could see things, but brightness is a preference, not really anything relating to quality unless it's gamma, and then gamma can actually damage the picture slightly different because it's adjusting more than one variable there. But when it comes to brightness, it doesn't really have too much of an effect out of its aesthetics, so not really sure what that guy was on about, but there you go. So for the most, nobody ever mentions it, no one's ever complained. It's one of those things where it seems to have worked perfectly. However, looking through some of these recorded videos, this is going to be very dark. So I'm going to apologise in advance, folks, and if I do have to do any work, hopefully you won't see it because I'll have done it for you. And what I'm doing right now is I'm looking at the controls. I've kept this in because it's to show you the jump between versions of this game. So Pandora Tomorrow and Splinter Cell, the original, have a different control scheme to Chaos Theory. Chaos Theory changed things up in more ways than one. And the first one was putting your gun away and bringing it out. Before, I believed it was mapped to a trigger, now it was mapped to square, and I could not figure out how to drop the body like I was doing in those previous walkthroughs. So it was very confusing, and it's this interesting change that they've done to the mechanics for some reason. Oh, and you'll see me here looking at the goals to show you what they are. I'm not going to be doing this for every level, this is just because I was not too sure myself, so I brought them up, and I've kept it in for the people who are needing to double check. You have to rescue Morganholt, and then you have to do those two additional ones, which we're going to be doing later on, so don't worry about them. But in this game, when you pull your weapon out when you're carrying a body, it makes a noisy body drop, and it will attract people, and you'll have a rough time. On this game, you want to press the button to release the body that the game intends you to do, so none of the shortcut that I was doing in the previous titles to get around the slower animation. Animations are different now, folks, they've changed. One of the biggest changes you're going to see in this game, and the most heartbreaking part about making this walkthrough the way I'm doing it, is Sam can now do lethal takedowns. If you remember in the last game, he had this kind of elbow clop that if the enemy was aware of you, you had to do 2 to take them out, and it was really unintuitive, it was kind of funky looking, it wasn't very responsive or fun or interesting, and it really bugged me when I first played these games. And he had no alternatives. You either clopped them, or you grabbed them, or you shot them. That was kind of the Splinter Cell experience. Well, in this one, they wanted to make it a little bit more accessible and a little bit more streamlined and altogether 100% more badass. So Sam now has an option of a non-lethal takedown with L1 and a lethal takedown with R1. And the L1 takedown comes in different animations. Sometimes he'll punch the base of their neck or their spine. Sometimes he'll just palm their face so hard it looks like he's going to break their neck. There's a whole bunch of interesting animations and they all look really good. But the ones you won't see, which is the lethal ones, look even better. The lethal takedowns on this game were so delicious when I first saw them that I got addicted to doing them. And I don't mean that in some kind of, murder porn, horrific, I'm a murderer kind of way, some kind of sadomasochistic idiot. It was such a savage way of dealing with enemies that you could never really do in these games. He'll grab their throat, like round their mouth, and he'll shank them straight into the back, up where the kidneys are. He does all kinds of nasty things. It's really brutal, really visceral, and really just evocative when you first saw it. Of course, nowadays we're all desensitized and games do horrendous things, but back in these days, it was subtle, it was swift, and it was effective. And I think it's really striking, especially in a Splinter Cell game. But alas, you'll not be seeing those, because to get 100%, you cannot kill anyone, unless they are a target. Cannot kill things, guys. You will fail if you kill people. The second stipulation for this rank is you cannot set off alarms, you cannot have enemies finding bodies, you cannot do any of the things that stealth games usually penalise you for. You can do none of it. However, one massive misconception on the internet, as I've been looking through YouTube and forums, is this notion that if you knock out civilians, you lose percentages for it. That is a complete lie. It is a falsehood, a fallacy. It shouldn't exist, but unfortunately, due to ignorance, it does. Knocking out civilians does nothing. As long as nobody finds their body, you are perfectly fine. If you kill them, your rank is dead. But if you knock them out, you will never ever have your rank affected. The reason I believe that this has become a thing is because of the bathhouse level. The bathhouse level on this game is notorious for being broken or glitchy, and it seems like it is, but it actually isn't. It's just incredibly finicky and very, very epitomising what I would call bullshit. But we'll talk about that in Bathhouse because it's a long level, and I'll probably be speaking it in the quiet times in the different missions, but at the moment I need to introduce the guide. Lighthouse is by far the easiest level to get 100% on, because it's the introduction level. There's nothing much to do, the objectives are very simple. Civilians will not affect your rank though. You have to complete secondary and optional objectives. You have to complete every single objective. The only objectives you can go away from not completing are the ones that get cancelled through the natural progression of the game. If you deviate, if you get 2 out of 3, if you don't even realise, if you don't even trigger the objectives to spawn, which is a thing, which I'll discuss later, you will always fail, regardless. Just as easily as you would have failed if you got an alarm. The good news is you don't have to go for 100%. 100% is for the people who want the challenge, or are mad completionist people, or the ones that just want to do it. That's for them. If you just want to get 80%, feel free to make a few mistakes here and there, but be very careful because on Expert the game is at its strictest and you'll probably get punished the strictest. I don't really know the differences between difficulties. I have literally only ever played this game on Expert once, and you are watching it. However, I have a knowledge of this game that stems from about 10 years ago when I played the shit out of it on the PS2. So, you'll notice here I am scanning these crates. That is the optional objective on this mission. You have to scan a handful of these weapons crates. The crates themselves aren't really out of the path of the level, so you should be able to get them just by being, attentive and looking around and trying to spot them. You can spot them quite easily because they generally stand out colour-wise and they generally have some kind of label on them that says fragile, so you can spot them that way. You will see them in the course of this guide if you don't know where they are. Currently, as I'm playing this, I know how to do the level, but I'm not sure where the crates are, so that is why you see me looking around it, taking it a little slow. And for the people who, want me to know 100% of everything, I do apologise if this is not as streamlined as swift as you would like, but this was a challenge to myself, and Leaving it in here, it means I'm a little bit more methodical, I'm a little bit more, on my toes, checking things out, getting things done. As Grimm's daughter introduces us to the slightly changed lockpicking sequence. But 100%, is there anything else I need to tell you? Don't kill people, don't get alarms, don't have bodies found, do your objectives. I think that's pretty much it. If you do that, you'll be okay. So let's talk about Expert. So Expert on this game is much harder than hard from the previous games. And I really didn't think it would be, but it turns out that it is, and it is for a few reasons. In the bottom right hand side you will notice that they've changed the HUD once again, and they've added a noise bar. I don't think Pandora Tomorrow had the noise bar. I think this is an iteration in this game, but it definitely had the shadow bar. It was only 3 in that game, now it's 4. So in the previous games, if you were in the far left box of shadow on your illumination gauge, you were okay. Any part of it you were generally okay. On Expert, if you are anything but touching the left hand side, the enemies will see you. They'll not be immediately sure what they've seen. Like right now, if anybody looks my way, they'll be like, is something there? And then they'll come my way. They have to be in a certain distance from me though. Of course, he was quite far away. But if they are even remotely closer than he was then, they will know something is up and they'll come and investigate. Like, look, he's investigating. He saw me just then, and that's why he's doing this. So the first thing you will notice is the AI is a lot stricter on how they can see you. And those bars in the bottom corner don't matter. You can have 1,000,000 bars, it wouldn't make a difference. If your white thing is not touching the left-hand side of that box, you are vulnerable. And you need to get this into your head as quickly as possible, or these missions are going to cause you havoc. It was a very strange adjustment to go from being quite invincible in the shadow to really having to make sure there was nothing I was not getting perfect with some of the placements, because as long as it's touching the left, you have immunity. The moment it moves, you better hope you can move your ass or that nobody's looking at you or you've failed and you have to reload. Additionally, on the sound bar, do you see how there's, how many is there? Like 30 squares to choose from of sound? Do you see the white square that's fluctuating? I believe the white square is kind of a base level for the average ambient noise. So if you stay under it, generally you won't be heard that much. It fluctuates. But on Expert, because the hearing is so much more attentive, you want to keep that noise down to as low as possible. You want to literally have it so that you're not making any white squares on that list. It doesn't really matter. And it sounds pedantic, doesn't it? But same with the shadow, same with the noise. If your indicator is moving on those bars, you're going to have trouble. Unless you've got rid of everybody in the area, or you're confident that they can't hear you, or that you're far enough so that they can't physically hope to hear you. That is the only difference. It makes Expert a lot more strict, but at the same time, we've just done 2 Splinter Cell games. We know how these work, and Chaos Theory is probably the height in level design for Splinter Cell games, I think, because every mission you play has about 3 or 4 special entrances, shortcuts, or skips to certain areas to get you past difficult situations effortlessly. I will not be showing you all of them in these videos. I'll just be showing you the one that I chose or the one that I found. Of course, there are things I'm going to miss, guys. I'm not perfect. But for the most, I'm going to show you my comfortable route through the levels. And right there, I don't know if you noticed, but as I was moving forward, somebody saw me because of the light. I should have shot out the light. And I don't know if you remember, but I was mentioning in Pandora Tomorrow that at some point in the Splinter Cell series, shooting out lights becomes a bit of a detriment. And it's this game. When you shoot lights out, they notice it now, and they notice it sometimes in a much more inquisitive way than they did before, which is more natural and more interesting, but also more dangerous. Also in this game, your pistol has the ability to electrically nullify lights for a short period of time. On the bottom right, where it says SC pistol, you'll notice there is a crazy kind of bar at the right of it. When I press the secondary function of the pistol, I can neutralize electronical things, and it will help in the long run of this game. That bar will empty, and then you will be waiting a couple of seconds for it to refill before you can do it again. Right now, this is an example of how this game's going to get really dark in some areas. I'm hoping you can still kind of see, because as dark as it is, You know, this is what you're going to be looking at when you play. So, hopefully it should still help you. Oh, and this is very important too. This is one of those old man things that I never really got adjusted to. Some of my strategies in this game are going to be a little bit foolhardy, because I am an old school Splinter Cell player, and I did not acclimatise to being able to hack things from a distance. If you are in direct line of sight with a computer or any kind of electrical equipment, you can go into that vision mode and you can hack it. Certain ones, I think, you have to go up to them and press, but for the most, you can do a lot of them at a distance and it's considerably safer. I, unfortunately, am going to be stuck in my ways, and I'm going to take unnecessary risks to go up to them and touch them physically, because I'm a fossil, much like, you know, Sam Fisher. I'm an analog dude rather than a digital dude in this game, so instead of using the technology, I'm going to be, you know, taking risks. But that being said, if you can't emulate a strategy, getting close to things, just hack it at a distance. If that doesn't work, you can always watch my way and see how I do it. Right now, I was looking here to make sure there wasn't a crate, and I also noticed that there's probably a pretty decent shortcut there to get up here and avoid those guards completely, but just like in the previous walkthroughs, you have to tilt the analog to walk. In this game, it's even more strict, because if you make any noise, then it's probably game over. Much like the previous titles, you can quick save, you can manually save, and you can wait for the game to auto-save. I had no trouble on this game with saving. This is me having trouble with the controls though, because they've slightly changed. I had no issues whatsoever with crashes. I had a really solid experience with Chaos Theory. However, this was the hardest walkthrough to make. And I probably need to explain this, but I'm going to take a quick sip, guys, while I walk over to this dude and probably punch him in the face. Be very careful in these situations. Because the AI is on expert, they react in a godlike fashion. The time you'll notice it most is if you try to knock somebody out who's in a seat. Because the game can't quite understand how to cue that animation of Sam knocking them out because they're in a chair and there's a bit of geometry between them. There's times when you get up to them and the action will not happen and the enemy will become alerted to your presence. It happens all the time. The way to get around it is to look at the direction that the character favours. Say if he's leaning on his right elbow, go to his right hand side. If he's leaning on his left, go to his left. Favour that side with your approach, but not too much or he'll see you with his periphery, and knock him out that way. If you're having trouble doing that, which can still be tricky, the easiest and most effective way I found was to go behind him and get the prompt to take him as a hostage. That way, almost never fails. You never have that moment where you're trying to clop them, he won't clop them, and then they get alerted. Very frustrating, kind of showing its age with that mechanic. But brushing the analog, it's something Splinter Cell has left behind. I have no idea if it's still in Double Agent, but I know for a cert it was not in Blacklist. Blacklist had very fast stealth. So did Conviction. Conviction kind of, you know, it paved the way for this new generation of stealth, which wasn't drastically different to the old games, it was just faster. So instead of the methodically slow, plodding, tilting analog sequences to make sure you make no noise, you can just hold it and you have complete immunity, which I prefer, personally. I would rather the game have maybe 3 different crouch speeds, depending on your posture, you know, a little bit like Metal Gear, how he can, you know, change his height when he lays down and stuff, and does those crazy, like, worms to move on the ground. I like the idea of that, because not only are you in full control of it, but you don't have to lightly brush an analog. And I know it's probably petty sounding, but I don't like the PlayStation analogs, I never have. I think they're far too... I'm not going to say responsive because it's not the right word, but you don't have to do much to them to move the analogs. They're very, you know, they're their own thing. They're also placed in like a less than ergonomic position for me personally. And this is coming from somebody, before you get up on my ass about being an Xbox fanboy, I had a PS1 before I had an Xbox, guys. I never had an Xbox. I had an Xbox 360, big difference. So I'm used to using those analogs. I remember when PlayStation controllers didn't have those analogs, goddammit. And I remember when they first came in, and it was interesting and it was cool and it was a revolution. and I really enjoyed them. But as time, moved on and I got used to the Xbox controller, or the Xbox 360, because the Xbox controller, good God, shivers. But the 360 analog, where it favoured the Dreamcast position for analogs, if you remember the good old Dreamcast, where it had it, where the D-pad used to be, I just kind of got used to that and it felt more natural to me. So every time I go back to the PlayStation, because the difference in how they are, the fact that instead of being... is it convex or concave? Concave goes inwards, doesn't it? So instead of being concave, they're convex. And there's a lot of things that make them very different. And of course, if you're somebody who plays on PS3 or PS4 exclusively, you probably don't even notice anymore. You're so used to it. It's like me with a fight stick. I got my fight stick at the end of December, beginning of January. It's now coming on the end of February, and I'm 100% more comfortable with it than I was before. I'm still not, there, because it's still going to take time, but I am infinitely more adept at using it. I wasn't to begin with, and it's something that you pick up with time. And brushing these analogs lightly, I find to be much more difficult than other controllers, just because of how it might be the dead zone on them that's just more open or something. I don't know. Suffice to say, they're like high precision mices. Mouse. How do you say fucking plural mouse? I don't even know. Mices. Weird. That's one of those things where I'm recording and my brain's reeling and I just can't get it into the right words. Wow, that guy's torch is very loud. There's some poor audio choices in this game at times, with just audio balancing way out of perspective. But suffice to say, I think pushing the analog is a mechanic I'm glad that not many modern games use, and I find it rather difficult to do effectively. And you may wonder what I mean by that. Well, believe it or not, there are more than one walking speed when you crouch and pushing the analog. There is, the speed I'm doing now, and then there's just a little bit faster than what I'm doing now, where I've got the sweet spot on the analog held, and it's a balancing act of if I push it even the slightest bit harder, I'll make a noise. So keeping it there is, it's carpal tunnel inducing at times, especially over long periods, but there are numerous speeds to his stride that practice makes perfect, I guess. But
I'm already tired of that question.
yeah, I'm definitely glad we've got rid of it. Look at that knife. The knife is so good, dude. I love it. The graphics on this game, though, it must have been the end of the generation when this one came out, where, the Xbox was a bit of a powerhouse for the time, and the PlayStation 2 was showing signs of its age, but the engine in this one, really good. Like, the lighting is so much better than the last games, and everything just looks really, really great. And there's going to be some guy like, it's not Crysis, like, fuck off. Oh, YouTube is full of those contrarians. It's amazing. You can't compliment something sometimes. You can't insult anything. Heaven forbid you insult something or you critique something, because everyone's like, oh, you just blah, 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 blah. But even when you compliment something, there's still naysayers that want to come along and be like, well, actually, I think you'll find that you're pedantically wrong and very stupid. Which is probably the internet personified. I was watching a hilarious DSP video earlier, and it was talking about Tobuscus, and... if you have no idea about how YouTube works, or some of the more popular people on YouTube, or just some of the more prolific names for whatever reason have got some, spotlight, you probably don't know who DSP or Tobuscus is, and you're not going to lose anything from that, because you don't need help, navigating a Lighthouse spotlight and sneaking up on one dude who's over there, which is very tutorial-esque, and one of the more simple things we've done. There also appears to be a zipline there, so there's probably a way of getting here that's a little cooler than what you just saw. But these are two internet personalities. One of them is massive. He has nearly 12 million subscribers. The dude knows YouTube. The other one is kind of a bitter success story of somebody who had a lot of subscribers quite early on, back before anybody was doing what I'm doing right now, talking on videos, putting up gameplay on YouTube. And he's not so successful anymore, and he's notorious for hate and being hated on and hating back, and it's kind of this perpetual spiral of downward progression. And somebody's made one of those videos where they're showing, him maybe not in his best light, I think is a rather political way of saying it. And he's insulting this dude, and the topic of discussion is these two people are competing YouTubers. YouTube is a competitive market, and he was getting ads for this other guy's videos on his videos, which, you know, in the spirit of free market and free competitive industries, I do think that that's a problem. I think it's not very fair, because it's YouTube's algorithm and its search engine favouring one channel over another. But if one channel has 6 million subscribers and one channel has 100,000 subscribers, who do you think YouTube's going to favour at that point? Are they going to favour the person that earns them, I don't know, $100,000 a month or whatever, $20,000 a month, whatever it is, when Machinima was giving really good contracts? Or are you going to favour the one who's closer to millions over time? I think I know which one a business is going to go for here, so it does seem kind of strange, but he's addressing the point that he doesn't like this, but also that he doesn't like the person who it's advertising. And throughout the little tirade that he did against this other YouTuber, he was mentioning how it wasn't necessarily personal, and what this person's done in this video and edited quite well is just to outline the hypocrisy and the maybe he didn't realise just how personally he was making it, where he insults Tobuscus a lot throughout this, and coming from somebody who uses insults and uses, shall we say, quite hyperbolic language to create theatre in my videos, which is not necessarily fake in any way, I just find it makes it a little bit more interesting and a bit more fun. Because that's what commentary is on some videos, when it's intended to be entertaining. Well, firstly, I like my commentary to be a combination of informative, helpful, and then maybe some light relief, and a bit of both. You know, I talk about all kinds of things. Some people like it, some people don't. It's whatever you like. And from this point onwards, I think I'm going to be trimming out a lot of the interrogations, but I kept this one in just in case. And look how good that water looks, dude. I don't know the year on this game, but I was really surprised at how great some of the visuals were. And I'm not necessarily somebody who's easily swayed by graphics. And I just come off playing Far Cry 4 on the Xbox One and thinking that game looked quite pretty, and then I came to this and I thought this game probably looked arguably prettier. And I know that sounds insane, but just in relativity to the time it was made, and I just think relative to the time it was made, I think it looks beautiful. But back on the topic, I understand using certain language to provoke a response. I do. You know, I used to call people in Dark Souls bitches, which... Did I ever really think that the people playing were in fact bitches? No, not really. The playstyles, I felt, were unsavoury, and I called them bitches, and I got a lot of hate for that. You know, those videos to this day still get people, you know, citing why I'm wrong, why I'm a hypocrite, and why I'm contradicting myself, and all kinds of weird shit. But at the time, it was kind of just in the heat of, you know, making it more entertaining. Because I could have sat there and been like, you know, then I tried to backstab him and it was a good fight, and I wanted it to be visceral and you know, uniquely my own. So I wore my heart on my sleeve, and the people that irritated me I called bitches, and it incited a lot of people enjoying it, a lot of people disliking it, and that's the tightrope that you walk when you do anything like that. Especially on a public forum, what do you expect? But at the end of the day, do I wish ill will on any of those people? No. Have I said I've wished ill will on them? Of course I have, because I find it hilarious. The notion of hoping somebody dies and his entire family watches him get cut in half by a train. That is one of the most horrific things you could say. But it's kind of fucking funny. And I think it's funny just because it's that harsh. And, like, why would anybody say this? And I think it's daft. And that's what amuses me, because, you know, I'm dark like that and dry, but it's not to everybody's taste. But when you're directly, you know, saying things about somebody and then saying that they weren't personal, it sounded really personal in that video. And just YouTube DSP versus Tobuscus, I was in tears. I thought it was so funny. It was, you know, not the best editing, but the editing that he did was equally biased against DSP, but it was an interesting video. However, this is Splinter Cell, and probably somebody's writing a very angry comment right now, like, why don't you talk about the gameplay? That was the Lighthouse. That was your 100%. There is nothing really in that mission that's going to stop you for too long, other than your unfamiliarity with the game, and I will see you in the next mission. Thank you very much. You take care now.